Star Wars is a love story. From the passionate moments of Anakin and Padme in the shadows of the Senate, to Han and Leia celebrating beneath the skies of Endor, the highs and lows of galactic war have always been paired with the highs and lows of romance. Fans of the High Republic have been treated to a number of memorable romances over the past year, but those have largely taken a backseat to the other stories being told. Enter Zoraida Córdova. With Córdova's experience in this era from the praised Galaxy's Edge: A Crash of Fate novel, the stage was set for an era-defining romance. Córdova delivers this in a tale that also includes the politics of war, the loyalty of legacy, and the true cost of lasting peace. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Emery, content creator here at Youtini, and I'll be taking you through our review of Star Wars: The High Republic Convergence, the latest adult novel in the High Republic from Zoraida Córdova. As always, our review will be spoiler free, so feel free to jump in and see if this book is right for you. With that said, let's get into the plot. Convergence brings High Republic fans back to the worlds of Irem and Arano, which were first introduced in Claudia Gray's Into the Dark. The citizens of the desert planet Arano have been locked in war with the ocean world Irem for generations. The only common ground between the people on these two planets is their desire to see the other's complete destruction. Now, the monarch and queen of each world have their councils, but the real hope for each world lies in their heir, Shiri Albaran of Arano and Fantu of Irem. The chancellors of the Republic send a Jedi convoy to call for peace between the two worlds, and the heirs see an opportunity to form a lasting unity between these two planets. Of course, a handful of zealots and a familiar adversary would rather see these two planets burn. Throw in a prince from Coruscant with a secret agenda, and you've got all the great makings of an intriguing story. Taken individually, these parts are nothing unique. Romance, war, politics, it's all classic Star Wars. But what really becomes unique about this plot is the way Córdova winds all of these two together. Love intertwined with politics and war, romance being the undertone for a lot that takes place, and each part of the story influencing the other threads. Combining these threads with the unfiltered brutality of a warscape, Córdova really creates something that feels less like Star Wars space opera and more like Dune. Of course, this book is Star Wars through and through, but it really reinforces the idea that Phase 2 isn't all about the Jedi. Of course, they're always ready to help out, but it really reinforces the idea that the Jedi aren't the leaders of peace, but rather are witnesses to the events on individual worlds at this time and are there to intervene and help out when they can. And we get to see the Jedi Knight at the center of this whole plot, Jella, really deal with this role of the Jedi, especially when the Jedi's very existence is questioned by the roguish Axel Greylark. And Axel and Jella's relationship is really another focal point of the plot of this book and serves to really support the idea that the characters and the relationships between those characters underlie the whole plot and move all of these other themes forward. The revelations and consequences of Convergence's plot may not be earth-shattering, but Córdova expertly crafts these complex relationships to bring into question so much of the rest of the plot and really drive the plot forward in a way that places the importance of connection and love right alongside things like duty and loyalty. Ultimately, we give the plot of this book a good. Now let's jump into the characters. And what a cast it is. Phase 1 of the High Republic introduced an incredible, memorable cast of characters right from the get. Phase 2 has introduced some great characters, but Córdova's new characters in Convergence are easily the best we've seen in this phase. Jella questions her identity as a Jedi when the Order has brought pain to those she cares about. Shiri makes a sacrifice for peace even though it betrays some of the things she's held her whole life. Fantu grapples with leadership despite humble beginnings, and Axel learns what it means to let someone else in instead of just being self-absorbed. Different readers will likely attach themselves to different members of this core ensemble, and that's really a testament to Córdova's well-rounded development of each character, making them each an individual independent, self-serving character in their own right. Shiri accepts her role as leader and protector of her home planet even as she learns to forge an alliance with a man that she barely knows. Fan 2 learns to step past his doubts about himself to become a protector for the people he cares about and fall in love with a woman, again, he barely knows. And Axel and Jella's relationship, well, you might think you've heard this story before, but it's full of twists and turns. Now, some of the motivations within these characters' journeys feel a little bit weaker than the others, but ultimately, this combination of characters creates such a solid foundation to move the plot of this book forward. And of course, beyond the foundation, we have an incredible cast of side characters, too numerous to mention, but all definitely adding to the overall story. Ultimately, we give the characters of this book an incredible. Now let's jump into the originality. One of the greatest pieces of Star Wars is its capacity for world building. Every new species, planet, and force ability has the potential to send a shiver down your spine, just as it did when you first saw the snowy battlefields of Hoth or the planet of Endor. However, harnessing that ability within the ability to tell a proper story is extremely difficult, yet Convergence does this with its portrayal of Eiram and Arano. Introducing the history of a generations-long conflict could easily turn into a snooze-fest history lesson, but Zoraida Córdova is not that kind of author. Instead of cramming this history into the first couple of chapters, it almost takes on life as a new character of its own, breathing its influence into each page, each chapter. There's no inorganic exposition explaining this conflict in detail, rather it's a living, breathing thing that each citizen of each of these planets feels and has experienced, and it comes out in the way they interact with each other and the way they push their narrative forward. And as this plot unfolds, we see that Córdova is using Jella as kind of a proxy for the reader diving into this conflict for the first time. The Jedi Order acts as kind of an impartial witness to this conflict to figure out where it can best support in the resolution of peace. And in that way, we get an impartial view of both sides of this conflict. Convergence also does a fantastic job of continuing to flesh out the villains of this phase in the Path of the Open Hand. Readers will definitely have a better idea of the group's motivations and what they do if they've read Path of Deceit first, but that's definitely not necessary before jumping into this book, as their motivations and intentions are fully fleshed out within the pages of Convergence. Ultimately, we give the originality of this book an incredible. Now let's jump into the writing. Mastering the style of a wartime romance is challenging to say the least, but Zoraida Córdova handles this with mastery and grace. What could have been a slog through forced exposition and lack of direction is instead a beautifully fleshed out narrative that tells the story organically through relationships. Córdova's prose is straightforward and effective, which you'd be familiar with if you read her previous work, A Crash of Fate. The book is also full of a number of linguistic refrains that are repeated over and over, kind of like the history of these two worlds. These phrases and descriptors are a Convergence invention, but the way Córdova crafts them makes them feel like they've been part of Star Wars canon for years, things like being born of Thylefire or the Prince of Coruscant. Zoraida Córdova crafts a story full of profound ideology without ever missing a beat in terms of enjoyment. Ultimately, we give the writing of this book a good. Finally, let's jump into the entertainment. Now, there's kind of an indescribable joy in watching those close to you fall in love. The first meeting, the butterflies, the bumps along the way, all of the things that build into this beautiful romance. Now, the relationships in Convergence aren't all neatly tied up with a bow, but Córdova uses that feeling to really get the plot rolling, to get the excitement rolling as you follow these burgeoning relationships. The ebbs and flows of the romance create a volatile environment within Convergence that keeps you wanting to turn the pages and never lets the excitement falter. But there are also space battles. Convergence isn't as action-packed as some of the other titles, and the beginning might be a bit slow for some readers, but the actual battles themselves are exquisitely written. Battles in the sky and in the sand keep you on the edge of your seat, keep you wanting to turn the pages. And really, at the finale, without spoiling any details, Convergence crafts one of the most tension-filled battles that the High Republic has seen. Each character is allowed to shine in their own right with their own stakes set. So whether you're compelled by a new relationship or a blaster bolt hitting a lightsaber, there's something in Convergence for you, and ultimately we give the entertainment of this book an incredible. Ultimately, Convergence presents a story of the power of love overcoming the overwhelming desire for conflict, and in doing so, Zoraida Córdova introduces one of the most compelling casts of characters we've seen in the High Republic to date. And through all of that, Córdova continues to expand the mythology of the High Republic that was started almost 2 years ago. There's something in this book for everyone, a character for every reader to latch onto, and ultimately we give this book an incredible. Convergence is available wherever books are sold, and the audio version is available on Audible, read by Mark Thompson. And if you want to get that version for free, stick around for this. Youtini has partnered with Audible to give you your first Star Wars audiobook completely free. All you have to do is head on over to youtini.com/audible, sign up for a free trial, and your first Star Wars audiobook is completely free, no strings attached. Thanks for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.